Hello, this is Liz Baxmeyer at CHS College of Health Sciences, and I'm here with Dr. Liz Lozano.
Hello.
So your research is in donor conception, primarily. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What is donor conception, and how does that relate to your research?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't really know what donor conception is all about. So basically, it's somebody who's born through assisted reproduction, so egg or sperm donation. And essentially, I look at that within the realm of attachment. So it has to do with like parent-child relationship, so how you feel with respect to your biological parents who have raised you and unbiological or non-biological parents.
So what does your research center around regarding a focus?
Yeah, so it's looking to see like how does attachment style, so how secure someone is like with their parents or how insecure, does that actually predict their curiosity about their donor conception? So are they just excited and wanting to know more about like who they are and where they come from? And then the other part of it too is using attachment style to see how that relates to whether or not they want to contact their donor and actually like find out who that is.
Okay, so that seems interesting, that the attachment style affects the action of the child, or their ability to act on their interest or their need to look for their biological parent. What does that system look like in the United States right now, as far as what's possible? Say if a donor-conceived child wanted to go and look for their biological parent, does the system facilitate that? What does that look like?
Yeah, we don't really have like a huge structure in place like for that. So surprisingly, or maybe not so surprisingly, the United States doesn't really have like really adequate, I would say, like regulations surrounding all these things. So other countries are doing a much better job. But nowadays, if you have like basically a child who's 18 years old, they can then try to like find who that donor is, right? Understand like their identity and some basic information about them. But yeah, unfortunately, the United States, we don't have like federal laws like pertaining to contact, any of that. And there's far-reaching implications when you think about it, because people are basically finding out that they're donor conceived like through genetic testing companies like 23andMe and Ancestry.
Right. Yeah, I can see that being an eye-opener. If you don't know, you think you know everything about your background, and then you take one of those tests and you see you have something that perhaps your social parents haven't told you.
Surprise.
is in their DNA, and is surprising, but then perhaps makes sense to you on some level.
Yeah.
So it seems very complicated and very interesting. Can you tell us a little bit more about those attachment styles, what those look like in the household, and how that informs research projects that you've done or studies you've done in the past?
Yeah, so people, everybody has a certain way that they approach their close relationships. So some people are naturally secure with how they actually feel towards their parents and other relationships. So like friendships, romantic partners. So typically, right, that's that's associated with like a whole bunch of positive outcomes. Like you're more satisfied in your partnerships and relationships. You feel like you actually get adequate support from people. Now, if you're insecurely attached, that means you're either anxious or you're avoidant with respect to your attachment. So people who are anxious tend to be like preoccupied with their relationships, whereas people who are avoidant, even though they may want a relationship, they tend to kind of like distance themselves from people. Mm-hmm. So yeah, with respect to the projects that I've done, it's just looking to see like, is one's attachment style like related to all these different outcomes possibly within the scope of donor conception.
Great, wonderful. And then are there certain things or certain traits that you see that are consistent in circumstances where someone feels either secure or insecure? So
I don't really do much of the work looking at like people's behavior per se. So it's mostly like through self-report, where they're like kind of just like, trying to answer questions about their attachment style. But I have done some interviews with donor conceived people, and there does seem to be like some, pattern of results, like mostly. So people who are secure with respect to, their parents, they tend to feel like they're more comfortable, right? Like trying to like approach the donor, figure out who that person is, probably because they feel like they can have a supportive environment, right? If things don't go according to what they expect, say they want a relationship with this person and that person doesn't actually want a relationship back with them, they kind of have like the security and like safety of their parents that raised them to kind of like, offset any challenges.
Yeah, having that closeness and comfortability. I read one of your papers that you had published with some colleagues a little while back And it didn't touch on this, but perhaps some of the dialogue that you've had in these situations could inform this. But have you found that people, when they find out their donor conceived and they perhaps don't have a strong relationship with their social parents, do things start to kind of make sense for them? Or are there perhaps biological differences that have helped facilitate that slight detachment or that insecurity with their family?
Yeah, I think it's different, like according to different, individuals and like obviously their life experience. But yeah, there have been reports of people who are like, oh, they're putting the puzzle pieces together, right? They don't feel like they ever emotionally connected maybe to the non-biological parent. And then when basically they meet the donor or they get information about that person, they're like, oh, that's why I'm the way that I am. So it kind of like helps with their like identity, trying to like make sense of like who they are.
Join us on the other side for part 2 of this podcast.